the Bear is brought to you by PrizePicks and the GameTime app.
And welcome into Poke the Bear, presented by PrizePicks. Go use that promo code CLNS to get up to $100 cash back on that first deposit. And we're presented by GameTime. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $20 off that first purchase. Terms apply. I am filling in for Conor Ryan today, and across from me is Ty Anderson. Ty, what is up?
Hey, what's going on? How we doing?
Doing great. It's been a little while since you and I have done a podcast together. It's been a minute.
Years. It feels like.
I think it actually has been years because for a long time you've held out from coming on Bruins Beat. It's like you will not.
I never said
texts,
that.
I never said that. Come on.
I never said that. No, I just made memes about you asking me to come on. That's all I did. I never said no. You just stopped asking me.
Yeah, for a reason.
Nah, I don't know.
Well, the memes were there. Well, the best meme you have of me is the Jose Canseco thing. That's like, I don't think anything will ever beat that.
I think you're right. And that kind of came out of nowhere. That wasn't like a planned thing.
No,
it just said, happy birthday. Everyone said happy birthday except this one guy or whatever it was. And I was like, he's talking about Evan. I had to make it known. He was talking about you.
And the best part is you don't tag me. So like I'll open up Twitter. Yeah. I won't be on Twitter for like a couple hours and I'll open it up and like the 7th tweet will just be like Evan Marinofsky. So at some point Jose Canseco is going to be like, who is this Evan Marinofsky dude?
Buddy, geez, wait till he comes knocking on your door. That's going to be something. That's going to be a sight.
With his big baseball bat and his jacked out, roided up biceps just ready to beat my face in. I can't wait.
He can still hit a dinger. He can still hit a dinger. You're going to find out firsthand. Don't worry.
That's right. Crack these glasses right in half. Just gone. Yeah, no, that's I'll occasionally be like, I wonder if Ty's tweeted any Jose Canseco stuff anytime soon or anytime recently because you miss out on it. Because I go on Twitter so infrequently during the summer. Like I go on sometimes. The memes are too good, but
you texted me a reference today that we're not going to talk about on here, but you made a reference that went right over my head because I had not heard this, but it was on Twitter that day.
Yes, I did. And that reference was like my top 8 tweets on my Twitter For You page.
Completely over my head. I had to Google it. I was like, what is he talking about right now?
I'm not going to mention it because I don't want to even get into it. It's so stupid, right, but it's hilarious. So you can figure, if we're doing this on Friday, July 26th, you can probably imagine what that little joke is. Anyways, not a lot of Bruins news to talk about. Nothing that was that's super new or pertinent. You and I have not discussed what's going on in this offseason. And I think there's a good jumping off point. A couple days ago in The Athletic, Dom Luszczyszyn published a story about salary cap efficiency rankings and where teams rank and how efficient they are with the cap. And the number 1 and 2 teams are, fairly clear. Panthers, Oilers, 1 and 2. And again, this is all based off the Athletics model. Bruins rank 15th, which is a pretty stark fall from being 4th last year. Now, as Dom explains, the biggest reason why they went down to 15th is because of the Elias Lindholm and Nikita Zadorov signing those big players at those money. So for instance, the model has Elias Lindholm's value at $5.8 million and he's making $7.8 million. So the contract grade is like a D. And then Nikita Zadorov, his model value is $2.3 million. And the contract itself is $5 million. Lindholm, I feel, is not 5.8. I feel like he is closer to 7.8. And my whole thing with Lindholm the whole time was I thought they were going to have to give him over 8 million. They didn't. So I was cool with that. Zadorov, 5 million, I guess is a little bit or a little bit more than what he's been valued at before, but I still think he's closer to 5 than 2.3. What do you think of that ranking? 15.
I feel like it's a touch low. Now, I think they'll be higher next year so long as these contracts age the way the Bruins think they're going to age. Now, one thing I've been told again and again throughout, both by people inside and outside the organization, is that it's hard to judge contracts right now and last year for that matter because the cap is going to go up so dramatically, right? And so teams are kind of preparing for, okay, yeah, like $5 million for a guy who's probably a second pairing D is a bit high, or $7.8 million for a guy who's coming off the year that Lindholm has seems a bit high. But as we continue to see the TV money, the expansion money, getting out of the COVID times, like all of that parlay into sort of the hockey related revenue, you're going to see guys that, maybe aren't second liners and first liners making, 6.5, $7 million per year. And so, I think it's going to age well, so long as those players don't fall off a cliff. I think the Zadorov contract is going to age very well. The Lindholm one, obviously, you'll have some concerns about that. But if he gels with Pastrnak and they're a 1-2 and you have Pavel Zacha there with them on the left wing, like, hitting 80 points again is not out of the question. I think 70, if he could be Bergeron, give you 25 and 45, 70 points and play a strong 2-way game, win some faceoffs, like, it's not Bergeron, but it's Bergeron-esque, right? Like that, I'm okay paying $7.8 million for that, because I think that's what that is going to be the going rate for that kind of production ultimately.
I also just think, like, I have him in a similar range. I think I have him at like 72 or 73 points next season. And, you look at the position Lindholm's going to be in, right? Pastrnak, Zacha, power play 1. Like, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for him to produce. 7.8 is what that's going to cost you, as you said. Like, I get why they are where they are now. I get why they are 15th. They're middle of the road. I understand that. But I think it's going to age well. And I think, we've talked a lot about the Lindholm contract. I know you've talked about it with Connor a lot. I've talked about it on Bruins Beat and here a lot. Like, is he a true number one center, like of the, is he a top 10 number one center? No, but I think he can fill the role, and I think he can do the job. And I think it's $7.8 million. If in 2 to 3 or 4 years he's your number 2 center and he's making $7.8 million, with, as you mentioned, the cap going up, I think that's a very good thing. I think there's nothing wrong with that. So, and I think Zadorov, as you said, like the way he plays, big, shutdown defenseman, if you can squeak 25 to 30 points out of him and get very strong D zone play and good physicality and, cutting off lanes to the net and this and that, you take that. That's worth $5 million in your top 4. So yeah, the model, like, I know that Lindholm's coming off a bad year last year. Zadorov is coming off just, a really good postseason, but, kind of being a third pairing guy. I still feel that the model's a little bit wrong there. Now again, that's a scientific model versus my brain, which technically mine would beat that. I would take the model out there. But I don't know. I think it's funny, some of the other, like what the model value, do you know who the second, or not the second most, but the second best contract grade is on the Bruins on that model?
I'm going to guess Trent Frederick.
You're not far off. He got a B-.
Okay.
It's Justin Brazeau. So the model values Justin Brazeau at $4 million, and he makes $800,000. Which is wild. $4 million for Brazeau. I mean, I liked what he gave you at the end of the regular season, but I don't know. I don't know. $4 million is quite there.
Yeah, and the other part of that too for me would be it's an extremely small sample size, to the point where I would almost not want to include that in my model if I were building one, because the sample size for a guy who's 26 years old, I believe, or close to it, right? He's 20. He's got to be. I think he's 26. I want to say he is. For a guy who's that age and has played 15 games in NHL, like that's not a huge sample size in terms of what you're working with. So, that's like saying, okay, well, Miroslav Shatan had a great 18 game run in Boston as a 38-year-old or whatever. All right, now he's $4 million. Like, no, you got to find out more. You got to see what's more there, especially like, I don't know, like I do wonder if Brazeau is a lock to make this team. I've wondered that from the get-go. So I love that the model loves him, but I'm also kind of putting my hand up and saying that's a very small sample size that you're basing that off of. And I understand you have the data, but like you got to work with it how you can. But, I think that, like, this is sort of like, this is why this team is in a weird spot. This is why 15 feels a little bit low, but I'm also sitting here saying, like, it might be high too, because like there's so much unknown, with this team. Like let's go beyond Lindholm and Zadorov for a second, right? Like Marchand's in the final year of his contract. Does he start signing the Bergeron and Chara kind of contracts where it's like low cap hit, some bonus money in there to give them the best roster? Okay, now how does that change the dynamic? Okay, let's say Swayman gets $8 million, right? Okay, let's say he's not as good as he was a year ago. Does that now change? Like, so they're in a weird sort of middle of the road pack here where, like, I just mentioned the Trent Frederick contract as being one that's really good. Okay, what if they sign him to 5.5 per and his shooting percentage goes in the tank? Now that contract looks kind of rough, right? And so they're at a true crossroads, I think, organizationally. So 15 seems right. It's just a matter of where does it go from here? I think that's the real question, right? And so, you mentioned Zadorov, and I talked about that contract aging well. Like, if he just connects with Charlie McAvoy even slightly, he's going to get about 8 to 9 points by accident, just because he'll make a DDD pass. McAvoy will hit Pastrnak, going towards the net, boom, goal. Now they get the secondary apple. He can do that. And so that fit and where they go from here, I think, is really going to be a huge part of this conversation.
And they could go down because, again, if Zadorov is not good and Zadorov is not, if Zadorov ends up being Derek Forbert, well, then that contract's going to look awful. If Elias Lindholm, if last year was sort of the beginning of a trend and not the outlier, that contract's going to look awful. Mm-hmm. And as you said, and even what does Brad Marchand give you this year? And then what does he sign for, right? Like, he's getting older. You and I have talked about this at length on our walks home from Bruins playoff games. We would walk to my car and we would basically do podcasts there and back. But I think what Marchand gives you, I did a predictions show with Connor a few weeks ago, and we talked about biggest disappointment this year. And I said, I don't think it's the biggest disappointment, but I think what's going to be sadder or, what is Brad Marchand's production going to be this year? And I think it's a valid question because playing with Charlie Coyle, I mean, that's not an offensively inclined center. Who is going to be on the right side of that line? Now, if Marchand was up with Lindholm and Pastrnak, it might be a different story. But if we're going off of him playing with Coyle and Lysell, Geeky, Frederick, what is that production going to be like? Not to mention he's getting older. And obviously, you doubt Brad Marchand. It usually comes back to bite you. But I do think that that's also something that they have to consider is what he's going to look like going forward.
It's a huge question. And I think to your point, you sort of alluded to it right there. Like, how is that line's usage? And A, how is their usage? And B, where does he slot in? Like, I do think they're going to give a little bit of a run here to Marchand, Lindholm, and Pastrnak. I think that they might give that a little bit of a run. Maybe a month, maybe 10 games. Like, you kind of look at that and say, Lindholm was at his best when he had Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Tkachuk with him. Can you replicate that a little bit by having Marchand and Pastrnak? Now, the flip side of that is it makes you extremely top heavy, as we saw when they had Bergeron there. But if what you're saying is true, right, or maybe Marchand is going to take a step back, or he's not the dynamic sort of, line driver that he was, say, 3 years ago, maybe that is the good spot for him, right? Because he's that's how you're going to get the most out of his game moving forward. So I wonder, where they slot him. But to your point, like, if it's Coyle and Marchand, that's going to be a shutdown line. They're going to utilize that as more of a two-way line that's going to go against the other team's top players. You sort of look at how they utilize them in the playoffs and the regular season. Like, that might be how they utilize those guys. So if that's the case, his production is going to go down. It's going to go back to, or not back, but it's going to drop down to the ceiling, maybe being, 27 goals and 65 points around there. Like, maybe that's his new norm. Nothing wrong with that, but it, how does that change the dynamic of this team and the contract and everything else that follows and how they build that roster from there? So it's really interesting, right? Like part of me is sitting here right now on July 26th and saying, they're going to put Fabian Lysell there. They're going to put Georgi Merkulov there. And then the other part of me is going, no, they're going to put Morgan Geekie there. You know this by now. They're going to put Morgan Geekie there, and they're going to have one of those guys begin somewhere on the bottom of the roster. But like, how they build out that line and its ripple effect on their roster is going to be one of the most interesting storylines I think to follow in camp.
To me, that's the biggest. I mean, that's the biggest hole. That second line, what are you doing with the bottom six? We have a good idea of the guys that are going to be in there. We'll talk about that in a bit, but you know the guys that are going to be down there. It's just how they kind of map it out, who they put together. The first line seems fairly clear. That second line is the question. I want to get to that in a second, but first, quick word from our friends over at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the PrizePicks community today. Get in on the excitement and win up to 100 times your cash with the summer games on PrizePicks. With PrizePicks, you could turn $10 into $1,000 while watching Team USA rack up the gold medals this summer. You can make a PrizePicks lineups of players across basketball, soccer, tennis, golf, and more in as little as 60 seconds. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 players' stat projections, and you're locked in. Personally, on the Red Sox side of things, I'm going with Jarren Duran more hits. I'm also going with Rafi Devers more hits. Those two are just on fire as the Red Sox make their quest for the postseason. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code CLNS on PrizePicks for a deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. So that second line might end up being the biggest storyline at camp. What do you do with that second line? Who do you put there? Who do you put there? Because it sounds like you're thinking maybe Zacha, Coyle, Geeky.
So, I mean, out of the gate right now, I think it's Trent Frederick. I think that's who you put there. I got 5 contenders in my head right now, and I have Lysell, I have Geeky, I have Frederick, I have Brazeau, and then Merkulov. Now, when we talk about Merkulov, I think it's worth noting that since he's gone pro, I cannot find an instance where he lined up on the right wing. I can't find it.
Yeah.
And if we go back to even at Ohio State, I don't think he played right wing there much at all. He's a left-handed shooting center. He's played some left wing, as we know. He's really never done it. And so I think that if you're going to look at that, like, it's almost like Frederick or Geeky makes the most sense to move up. And then you have Merkulov slide in on a third line spot somewhere. Then you have a third line that's very green, right? Like and I think for the Bruins, like, Frederick is that guy. They like putting him on any line because it's like, okay, that line is going to be good. Like, that line is going to be okay with Trent Frederick there. Now, so I really do think it's down to probably Geeky, Frederick, and outside shot Fabian Lysell. But those are the options that I have right now. If I were to handicap it today, I'd say Trent Frederick. But curious what you think.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I've been saying all along, that spot feels like Lysell's to earn. And I think that's certainly the best spot they could put him in to see what he's got, right? We can all agree Fabian Lysell is not a fourth line guy. You don't put him on the fourth line. There's not really a point to that, especially with what the fourth line is turning out to be with guys like, Max Jones, Kostelic. Like, it's going to be a big, bruising, hard on the forecheck fourth line. That's not Fabian Lysell. That second line spot feels like the best spot for him. Now, does Jim Montgomery, who is an NHL coach who wants to win games with reliable guys, is he going to rely on Fabian Lysell enough to put him in that spot? Or would he rather go with a Morgan Geeky or Trent Frederick? It's probably he'd rather go with a Morgan Geeky or Trent Frederick. I think, though, I want to see what Lysell has on that second line. I want to see it. Now,
it'd be a waste of time if you don't find out. It's a waste of time if you don't find out. So
this is the other thing. At some point, A, you need to see what he has, and B, you need to see what he has to also build up his trade value. If he's a good fit and he works, great, right? On Bruins Beat earlier this week, someone asked me what my expectations were for Lysell. And I've said all along, I don't think he's going to be a bust. I don't think he's going to be terrible this season, but I don't think he's going to go on that second line and be like, oh, they don't need anybody at the deadline. Like, we're good. He's got 25 goals. Like, we're set. I think he's going to be somewhere in that 10 to 15 goal, 30 to 35 point range, somewhere in there, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But even doing that would build up his trade value a lot more than what he has at the moment. And so, I would probably go with him on that second line. I don't, unless he has a crazy good training camp and a crazy good preseason slate of games, I would be shocked if they opened the year with that, given the way Montgomery coaches, the way NHL teams are. I think Lysell is the right move there. But I wonder it. But again, with the way that they didn't make any moves there to get a top 6 winger, you do wonder if that's Lysell's to lose. I think it is his to lose.
The other part of this too is that you keep talking about Jim Montgomery. He is entering the final year of his contract. He does not have an extension.
Yes.
He needs to win games now and to win playoff games later to earn a second contract. Like, if he enters the year without an extension, that'll be the first time they've had a lame duck coach I can't even remember the last time, honestly. Like, it's rare for them to do this. Like, they took care of Cassidy, I want to say in August or like early September. They would take care of Claude before the season began. But you know, like you mentioned it, right? Like, it'd be a waste of time, or I mentioned it'd be a waste of time if you don't find out, right? Like, you can't have what you did last year. And I'm going to sit here and I'm going to tell you, I don't know if Merkulov is any good. I don't know. It'd be great to find out, though. I think when you call a guy up who's an AHL All-Star, right, coming off his second straight, basically, point-per-game season in the minors, you give him a 4-game run against Jersey, Detroit, Columbus, and Pittsburgh. 3 out of those 4 teams were ass, by the way. They're not good. They were not good teams. And you play him 15:08, 8:33, 12:15, 6:23. What a waste of time. We didn't learn anything. We didn't learn anything about that. And the other part of it, too, Evan, is that you had Zacha and Pastrnak together all year. And you had a rotating cast of characters, Heinen, JVR. The list goes on and on. But, like, you couldn't give Merkulov 1 game there? Just see if something clicks? Just find out? You couldn't do that? So I don't want to do that again, because that you're not going to teach the artist how to be a plumber, right? Or I'm sorry, you're not going to teach a plumber how to be an artist, but you can teach an artist how to be a plumber. But I'd like to find out, like, don't just box them in right out of the gate. Move them around, try them different spots. And so if I'm the Bruins, I want to see if Merkulov or Lysell can hang playing with talent that they're going to be playing with throughout their career. And then I can teach them the finer details. I know that might be a weird way of looking at things, but I think the days of calling up an offensive threat and putting him on your 4th line and saying, work your way up, kid, in the D zone, like, I think that's kind of antiquated at this point. And I was led to believe that this is a coach that can get the most out of younger players. And so I kind of want to see that. I want to see it with talent that is going to maximize that player's skill set and vice versa.
And again, I think, working your way up the lineup can work at times when you have a thinner roster in terms of talent. They have a ton of bottom 6 guys. There are so many. And they have so many fringe top 6 guys. Right. So to me, like, is Lysell this season going to get on the same defensive level or defensive responsibility level as a Frederick or a Geeky? And I'm not trying to make excuses for the player. Like, it's up to him. He's got to do it. But let's be realistic here. And so that's why I keep going back to this. Like, you have a chance here to try Lysell on that second line. And to put him with a Marchand and a Coyle, or a Zacha and a Coyle. And again, like, that's a lot of expectations for a guy like that, for a first year NHLer. But that's the spot. And I think that's going to be one of the biggest storylines of training camp. I want to get more into this. We're getting into the second and third lines here, and I think it gets really interesting. Patra, Merkulov, so many guys there that where are they going to fit? Young guys with kind of high ceilings. But first, quick word from our friends over at GameTime. It's the summer, which means nothing beats a ball game. The crack of the bat, the roar of the crowd, and the nice weather. It's both relaxing and exciting. The perfect combination. Life is good. Have those experiences with GameTime. GameTime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the GameTime app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, GameTime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. The Red Sox are actually good, which makes it even more fun to be at Fenway this summer, but maybe you're planning a trip around going to an opposing ballpark, which is actually one of my bucket list items. hitting every MLB ballpark in the country. Thankfully, I have GameTime to help that happen. Some of the things I love about GameTime are last-minute deals. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater. There's flash deals, save even more, with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. And I like the zone deals. Save even more when you choose a section and let GameTime choose the seats. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So that third line, I think, is also an intriguing one. There are more candidates to put on that third line than you have to put on your second line, but it's still obviously not formed yet. Granted, we're not even a training camp, although it would be nice to be a training camp because we'd have a lot more to talk about. But that third line, I think everyone assumes Matt Poitras is going to be the third line center. And I've been saying all along, I wouldn't assume that. I wouldn't, again, he missed a lot of last season coming off a shoulder surgery. Now he can go to Providence. I don't know what they're going to do, but it wouldn't shock me if he started the year in Providence. And I don't think that's a setback if he did.
I don't disagree with you. When you look at this right now, basically, I struggle to see a scenario in which Merkulov, Lysell, and Poitras all make the team. I just struggle to see how that happens.
I completely agree with that.
I think you could probably have two of them make it. I don't think you're going to have all three make it. And so when we sort of look at where those players are, right? You mentioned Fabian Lysell, 2021 first-round pick. One pick after him, Wyatt Johnston. When I talk to people about Lysell, it's like he feels like he can show you more. If he's given a chance in NHL, he feels like he can show you more. There are other people who don't agree with that. They say, no, I don't see it with him. Respectfully, he's a very polarizing player. You talk to talent execs, you talk to scouts, you talk to people, like they either believe in him or they're like, I don't see it, and so. And then we talk about Merkulov, right? Like back-to-back years of basically a point per game in the AHL. AHL All-Star last year. I don't think he has much more to prove down there. I think he has to prove it up here. And so, to your point, who loses the least by going to Providence? It's Matthew Poitras because he's still so young. He's still so young, and there's not a confidence thing. There's not like if you send him down, man, you're losing him for good now. Like he's gonna be pissed. He's gonna want to trade. Yada yada yada. Like he loses the least by getting sent down to Providence, and that's typically the path that the Bruins, more often than not, have chosen. Like they have decided to take the path that provides the least amount of turmoil and headaches, whatever the case may be, unless you force their hand, unless you force them to put a guy on waivers, send him down to the minors. Like they tend to use their options as best they can, I would say.
I agree. And I think Poitras forced their hand last year. I don't think they expected him to make the team out of camp as a 19-year-old. I don't think that they did. And again, I still think he's going to have a good training camp. I did a roster projection on one of the podcasts recently and mentioned him as the third line center going into the year. And I think that happens, but it wouldn't shock me if it didn't, because you have guys like Georgi Merkulov, as you said, who don't have anything left to prove in Providence. To send him back there is to just be like, oh yeah, go back and do the same thing. And at some point, the player's going to say, well, I'm done here. I've put up 2 straight 50-point seasons in the AHL. Can I get an NHL shot? Please, can you please trade me? And so I do think that, and I also agree with you in the sense that not all three can make the team. You have too many veteran or older proven options, Jones, Kostelic, Brazeau, in that bottom 6 that would probably make it over those three or over all of those three. So what do you think the third line ends up being? If you were to project one today, what would it be?
It's really hard to project, man. I wrote down a couple of options. Now, assuming that Poitras is the guy going down to Providence, it's probably something like Merkulov and then Geeky, like either Merkulov or Geeky at center. And then your third winger there is either Brazeau or Lysell. I think that's probably where it would most likely be. Now, can Merkulov play center at the NHL level? You know, I talked about what a waste of time it was his NHL call-up last year, but it was clear he wasn't strong enough to win faceoffs. Like that was obvious. I think he lost, I want to say 68% of them off the top of my head here. So does that improve? Can that improve? If not, well, you got Morgan Geekie there, and Merkulov can play left wing. And so that right side would be either Brazeau or Lysell. And this comes back to what we talked about earlier in the show, which is like the Bruins are going to want a veteran guy there with one of those players, especially if that's a line that has two of those players. Like you're going to want a Geekie or a Frederick there to stabilize things, to make them feel comfortable, to, you know, just have some additional backup and know-how on the ice. And so I think that's why Geekie makes the most sense for that third line. He can play center. He can play wing. I think you get more out of him on the wing than at center, but, you know, he can do it. And so I think that's kind of where I would probably build that line out. If you have Merkulov there, be it at wing or center, and then you have Geekie and Brazeau, like, okay, now you got a speedster with two bigger bodies, right? Like, is that what you want on your third line? There were times last year where it was. I'd be curious there. Or you have the opposite, which is you have two speedsters and sort of the puck protector, if you will, with Morgan Geekie there. So it's an interesting call, but I think you're going to see a veteran and two youngsters. It's just a matter of which guys you see there.
I could see it. When I did my roster projection, I had that second line as Marchand, Coyle, Lysell, and then Frederick, Patra, Geekie. Patra kind of insulated by those two. Lysell playing with two veterans,
which we saw last year. I think we saw that. I want to say early in the year, we saw like that was a third line in the year for them. So
yeah, and I think it also goes back to something we talked about earlier. That Jim Montgomery, as of now, does not have a contract past next season, so he is a lame duck coach. Are you going to be willing to try these young guys out? Like, I don't know. I mean, again, I think there are real expectations with this team. I have said they're a Stanley Cup contender. They should win, 2 rounds in the playoffs. Like, I think that is all valid and valuable. And if you come into the year and, you're losing games early in the year because you can't score again, and Lysell isn't working out, or Patra or Merkulov, and like, that's why I think, like, it wouldn't shock me, and I think it probably is more likely to happen than not, that guys like Frederick and Geekie are given shots up in the lineup over others because they're at least proven. You at least know what you're going to get from a reliability standpoint. And I think I wonder if we see a Montgomery contract extension in the fall. And my thing with the Montgomery thing is, like, if they, like, he's had tons of regular season success the last 2 years, right? They overperformed like crazy last year. They outperformed all expectations in the regular season. The year before, they best regular season team ever. And they outperformed every expectation in 2023 or 2022-23 as well. There's nothing left to prove in the regular season. What he has to prove is in the postseason. That first round bow out 3-1 blown lead against Florida in 2023. And
almost
then this year
again.
almost happened again to the Leafs. So, but you get to the second round and you put up an admirable fight against the Panthers in 6. But, like, are they gonna be like, hey, Monty, like, you're gonna have to go further in the playoffs before we give you a contract extension? Like, that's also a tough position for a coach to be put in as well. So, like, what is it going to take to get him an extension?
I think you got to get out of the second round. I'm going to be painfully honest here. I would not give him an extension right now. I don't. There are some signs that I think are I don't want to say doomsday. That's way too strong, but there are some concerning signs. I did not like, and this extended beyond Montgomery. I have to admit this. This was you heard this from Don Sweeney as well, that we are not a volume shooting team. You built a volume shooting team. You don't bring in James Van Riemsdyk unless you view yourself as a throw it to the net, bang away till it goes in kind of team. And talking to players were saying, like, we got to shoot the puck more. We got to get shots on goal. In the playoffs, there's no such thing as a bad shot. And so there was a disconnect. There was a disconnect there between the coaching and the management and what the players wanted to do. Never a good sign. Now, is it the end of the world? No, it's just people disagree all the time. But that's a little bit like, ugh, okay, do you tweak that now to play the style the players want to play? Because keep in mind, this was sort of a problem both at the end of Claude and the end of Bruce Cassidy. Players had said, well, we wanted to play a certain way, and the coach wanted us to play a different kind of way. It's always a bad sign when that starts getting kind of public a little bit here. And we're starting to see little bits of that coming out. Another thing that would put my antenna up a little bit here. The Bruins brought in Jay Leach, a guy who interviewed for Jim Montgomery's job before they hired Jim Montgomery. They also promoted Joe Sacco, another guy who interviewed for Jim Montgomery's job before they hired Jim Montgomery. So now Jim Montgomery oversees a staff that has two guys who were considered top candidates for his job before he got it. Kind of weird, right? A little bit weird. And I go back to Bruce Cassidy joining Claude's staff in 2016, 2017. Everybody knew, oh, that's the guy. If something happens, that's the guy. The Grim Reaper is now on the bench with you. And so I just wonder. And now, Evan, to bring it all back to where we started here, they brought in two guys that they think are going to be valuable, legit contributors to their team. So if you come up short again, and the same issues are prevalent again, you're going to look at the coaching staff. You're going to look at the coach. You're going to say, okay, this isn't working. Like, we got to change something here. And so I think success is getting out of the second round. Now, if they go 7 in that second round and they lose, I'm not saying, oh, nope, got to fire him and make it to the third round. But you got to have a step forward now that you have a better, more complete roster than you did a year ago, for sure.
I agree with you. And I think the other thing is but can they wait that long? And obviously they can. Montgomery has to coach that out. But I just wonder if we're sitting there in March and he's got no extension, it's like, well, all right, well, he's probably gone then. Because, coaches look ahead. Moneyball famously, Art Howe being like, yeah, I can't be a lame duck coach. I want a contract for next season. And again, I know I'm crossing sports there, but
you can always do that. That's only a Felger and Mass thing. Nobody cares about that.
I know.
Cross as many. Do you want to talk about pickleball? Let's talk about pickleball. I don't care.
I've been picking up tennis lately. I really like tennis. Let's talk tennis. All right, my hand-eye coordination's getting really good.
Once, and now he loves tennis.
I can't help it. The Montgomery stuff is interesting though, and I just you nailed it with and you look at this roster, right? Like they bring in Elias Lindholm, who's a two-way force. He's not, historically has not been a 90-point guy. It's not like they're bringing in Mark Savard in 2007, coming off, being with the Thrashers, or anything like that. You bring in Nikita Zadorov, who's a shutdown physical two-way presence. You bring in guys like Max Jones, Mark Kostelik. They're big, they're physical, they should be hard to play against. They should also kind of be a shot volume team. Like this is not so different from the team last year that we kept saying they need to throw the puck at the net more. Again, we all agree, high danger shots are the best. You want to get to those high danger areas. I write about it all the time with New England Hockey Journal. The kids who can get to those areas are the ones that move on to Division I and all that stuff. But when you're getting 5 shots in the first period, especially in a playoff game, that's not conducive to success. And this lineup is not good enough, is not skilled enough to get 5 shots and score on 2 or 3 of them. They're not. This looks like a lineup, at least, to start. It looks like it's going to be a lot of bruising and rebounds and crashing the net and tips, which is nothing wrong with that, but you need to up that shot volume. And I think that's going to be a big storyline in the first couple months of the season.
Yeah, and the other part of that, too, is that I crunched the numbers during their second round series. They actually had a better shooting percentage on low danger looks than high danger looks. And so it was like,
wow,
just get it on goal, dude. Get it on goal. And
Bobrovsky, the shots would beat him from the outside, but in tight, he was, outstanding. And I was like, just throw the puck from anywhere. He's not seeing it well.
Exactly. Long range was an issue for him in that series. And so, yeah, you just want to see some adjustments, right? Like that's sort of the name of the game, right? And if you're the Bruins, you're saying to him like, hey, this is the best roster you've had since the team that we built that was a $90 million team in an $82 million cap league that lost in the first round. And so you're never going to have a perfect roster, but that's when it comes on your coaching staff to elevate those guys, to maximize their talents and maximize their skill sets. And so I'm not anti-Montgomery. It's just I got to see a little bit more in-series adjustments before I'm comfortable giving him a 4 or 5 year extension, given the crossroads that we talked about earlier, given where this team is trending. Like, you got to be damn sure, right? And right now, I'm not damn sure. And You got two guys on the bench there now with him that you looked at and said, these guys, you looked at one point and said, these guys are as good as this guy or close to it. So I just wonder there.
And they're more homegrown than Montgomery is, right? Like Jay Leach spent years in the Bruins organization. Joe Sacco has been here now for years. I know he's been other places, but like I also look at that end of it too, where, you know, obviously Montgomery's now been here 2 years, so he understands the organization and everything. But the Bruins have had a lot of their fingerprints all over a guy like Jay Leach or Joe Sacco in a way that they didn't have on Montgomery. And I also think just the way the NHL head coaching carousel operates, you kind of have to be really sure of someone. I mean, people are fired for much less. And I'm not saying that's right. I think the NHL is way too trigger happy in letting coaches go and thinking that other people are going to make an impact. You see at the college level, guys last much longer because they're given longer leashes, and obviously you have a different team every year. You know, you have new kids coming in and out, so there's that. Whereas in the NHL, a voice can, you know, we saw with Bruce Cassidy, the voice, you know, they started to tune it out. But you've got to be sure of it because there are other guys out there that can do the job. And I wonder if the Bruins look at it in that way too.
To your point, Evan, I just looked this up real quick. How many coaches do you think have been on the job in their respective city longer than Jim Montgomery has the Bruins now after 2 years?
Isn't it like 3 or 4?
It's 11. It's 11. And now let's keep in mind that 1, 2, 3.
Wait, longer than Montgomery?
Longer than Montgomery.
Oh, okay. I was thinking of a different. I think I was thinking of Marty St. Louis or something.
But if we do it the way that, let's just say that they weren't hired that summer, that Montgomery was hired, it's 5. It's Marty St. Louis, Rod Brindamore, Jared Bednar, Mike Sullivan, John Cooper. That's it.
That's what. Yep.
So like shelf life, to your point, like, yeah, it's never been shorter. And that's not always a good thing for a team. Look at Bednar. Look at the way they let Bednar build a team that was incomplete, right? Like he stuck through some pretty, you know, like they had some fatal flaws. They blew some series. They blew some leads. Look at Brindamore in Carolina. Look at Mike Sullivan in Pittsburgh. Like you kind of have to go through it to a degree. You can't fire a guy at the first sign of danger, but with the Bruins, it's kind of been their track record to a certain degree. And the other part of it as well is that, okay, like Charlie Jacobs gave Don Sweeney and Cam Neely a full vote of confidence at breakup day. Like he gave them a to the point where he was arguing with KPD. He was arguing with Kevin Paul DuPont, being like, well, why would we fire them? Why would we fire them? Why would we fire Cam and Don? So it's like, that's not happening. It's got to be the coach. If anyone goes, it's going to be the coach, it feels like.
I agree. And I think, you know, the only thing Montgomery has left to prove is playoff success and getting past that second round. And the question is, you know, are they going to be in a spot where they are both happy with each other if they get past that second round, where in May of next year, when Montgomery is mulling over where his kids are going to school the next year, like, is he going to be in a mood where he's like, yeah, I want to come back, you know, where like you didn't commit to me until the 11th hour. Or are they going to say, you know, we have other options?
You know, Brindamore was looking like a free agent head coach, and then he signed in Carolina, but he was going to be, my God, he would have probably been like the most sought after coach in the league, you know, had he hit the open market. And so I feel like I have to take the approach that I took with Jeremy Swayman with Jim Montgomery. All season long, when it came to signing Swayman to an extension, I said, I like him. I don't love him. I like Montgomery. I don't love him. I got to see a bit more in the playoffs. I got to see a bit more adjustments, you know, and listen, he's gone against a really good coach in terms of Paul Maurice, in terms of adjustments and strategy and all that. But like, I got to see that next step here before I'm like, yep, he's the guy. Like, I want to see a bit more. And so it's gotta come. And then I'd say, yep, that's a guy you extend. And so that might be unfair, but that's the world of head coaching now in this league, as we just talked about.
You bring up the 1-year deal they gave Swayman, the Prove Me deal. I wonder if they do the same with Montgomery. If they did like a 1-year deal.
No way he would do it. No way he would do it, I don't think.
Why would you why would you ever do that, right? Yeah. Like, there'd be no point to it. Where it's like, oh yeah, we're going to give you a 1-year deal next year. So you got 2 years to prove yourself. I think but I just wonder if they would ever do it. But
that's like Torrey Krug, his final year here. I was like, you know, the cap opens up 2 years from now. Would you want to do a 1-year deal? And like, before I can even finish the question, he's like, no, I don't want to do that. I'm like, all right, that makes sense.
Like, please, no, I don't want to ever do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Montgomery's an interesting case. I feel like it's not talked about a lot, but yeah, he's on the last year of his deal, and it's official. Like he is on the last year of his deal. And I think it's going to be a big storyline to watch as well this year, which we will watch. This Swayman stuff, but there's nothing new, so I don't feel the need to dive into that. You and I have talked about that at length. There's not much else there to talk about. We'll save that for another.
I'm still
episode.
not like, I think the overall point though, because people always ask about it. Whenever you tweet out the Bruins, it's like the first reply that comes up all the time.
Yes.
It's like
yeah.
I don't think that either side is panicking. And
I agree.
The thing that I hate is that people say Swayman's got a leverage. He's got a leverage. No, he doesn't. Until there's a team that has an offer sheet that wants to present an offer sheet and he wants to sign that offer sheet, he has no leverage. It's restricted free agency. It's restricted by definition. Like, he doesn't have a lot of options. And so I think they're just in a holding pattern right now where they have time on their side. Both sides can afford to be a little bit stubborn and to sort of hold out for what they view as the optimal deal. I still think the landing spot is 7.75 to 8 million, somewhere around there. I feel like that's where maybe 8.25, the Sorokin kind of contract. So we'll see what happens there. But I just think time is on both parties' sides right now. And so that's why I don't think it's worth panicking or as you said, like, we're not going to talk too much about it because nothing new to talk about. Like, right now, we're just waiting for one side to say, all right, enough. Let's just get this done and over with.
I think it happens right before camp or the very, very early days of camp. I think that's when it happens.
Dude, my prediction is getting dicey now. I said August 2nd was my prediction, and now I'm like, oh, that might not happen, man.
Maybe it does. Maybe it happens August 3rd. You're like, damn, so close.
They tend to love doing these like early August, late July news drops. That's when they would sign Bergeron. That's when they would, they take care of their RFAs. But yeah, like I think this might be closer to what you're talking about, like that David Pastrnak in 2016 or 2017 signing like the day of camp.
And was it there? I think was it 2019? Was that McAvoy and Carlo like September? Right, it was like very early of training camp, if memory serves. So that too.
They were entering, I think, the final year of their contract. I don't know if they were like. They didn't have a contract. I think McAvoy, it was the final year of his current contract.
Oh, okay. For some reason I thought that was his final year. Or memory must have been.
Dude,
that's low key 5 years ago now.
Well, you know what it also is too? It's also like around the COVID time where like okay, the season began in January and then free agency was in August. Like you know what I mean? Like it was free agency was in September one year. You're like, what the hell is going on?
I remember doing podcasts with Connor it was like September of 2020. So that bubble season or the bubble playoffs had ended, and then we were waiting for when the next season would start. That eventually was January 2021, but we didn't know that yet. And so free agency September. So like the Krug stuff happened, but I also remember that the trade rumor for the Bruins for Oliver Ekman-Larsson, and like mulling over like what would an Ekman-Larsson led decor be like for the Bruins, and thankfully that never happened. So I'm glad that they avoided that eventual trade.
Yeah. So when was that? Okay, so that offseason, that free agency in 2020 was October because they signed Craig Smith in October.
Okay,
and he was like their
so
big,
not September.
He was like their big signing, but it was.
I remember being at college. Yes.
Yeah,
yeah.
And then the one where they signed like Linus Ullmark and Derek Forbort and all those guys, that was like late July. That was like I want to say like July like 29th or something like that.
Of 2021 because they moved the free agency back. Yes.
Yeah,
and then free agency didn't return to normal until 2022, right?
Yes. Yeah, that sounds right. So it's just been. Okay. So you losing track of when this happened is completely justified because it's been madness now. It's been madness for like 5 years. Where you're just like, when was that? You're like, oh yeah, there were playoff games in September one year. Like it's insane.
There were playoff games at 11 a.m. on like a July morning.
So
remember that when the Blue Jackets Lightning game went to like 7 overtimes or whatever it was. That way, I think back on that all the time, and it's like a fever dream.
Oh
like, yeah, we were pumped that was happening because it was like, holy crap, we have something to watch talk about. It was great, but you look back and you're like, how the fuck did we do that? I mean,
Yeah.
it's insane.
It's like
completely insane.
I just imagine the Bruins and the Hurricanes like in uniform, watching like a men's league game, waiting for the game to end. Be like, all right, it's almost our time. It's like, all right, it's not our time, guys. Like, what do we do? Like, so that was weird. That's so weird to think about. And like, I do hate that the bubble is included in like a team's like official stats for the playoffs. Like they include the record in Toronto as like their home record in the playoffs. I'm like, no, that doesn't count. Like that shouldn't count at all towards anything. So, yeah. So that was a bizarre time. I'm so happy we're out of that. Oh, well, unbelievably
even
happy.
Like, not only was that weird, and I know people are probably tuning out because like I don't want to think about COVID, but like you think about also that next year where it was no fans in the stands, it'd be just like us up in the press box, which was honestly kind of like cool for a bit. It was like, oh, this is like pretty sick. We're just here like by ourselves. But it got old fast. But like that Stanley Cup was Montreal and Tampa.
Garbage. Like, terrible.
Awful. Horrendous. Because Vegas, it was supposed to be Vegas, Tampa, right? And Vegas lost to Montreal.
That sounds right.
And yeah. And so like, I just, you think back to that and it's like, we look at Tampa had what? Tampa has 2 cups in the last couple, or was it 3? No, they went to 3, but they got 2.
Yeah.
And it's like, so one was the bubble and one was Montreal.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, like, asterisk.
Yeah.
Really? Like, I don't know. Are we really counting those?
So like, I won't take them away because they won them.
No, I won't either. But it's like
it is funny that it is like the ultimate sort of like, I can see the point. I can see the argument. I'm not dismissing it. Yeah, that 22. I got to be honest with you. I remember nothing about that Dallas Tampa Cup final. I remember nothing about it. I don't remember
I only remember Hudobin. That was
I couldn't tell you anything about it. I couldn't tell you about a game. I couldn't tell you like how it was won. I don't even know how many games it went. Like that. Like that's how.
I don't remember either.
Yeah, it was like to what you said, fever dream. None of it felt real, and so. No. I don't know. Let's use it against Tampa when we want to get them upset, I guess, for some reason.
Exactly, right? It's good ammunition to have in the back pocket. Ty, what can people look forward to from you over at the Sports House?
I don't know. It's July. I don't know. We'll throw some crap together. We'll see how it all works. I got nothing right now, dude. I'm like, I am... Woo, it is tough sledding right now. So we'll have some stuff though. We'll have daily coverage every day or close to it, I would say. So yeah, check out the website. I'll be there. Check me out on X @_Ty Anderson. I'll be there as well on occasion, making fun of Evan. So you can find me there.
Can't even beat up by Jose Canseco.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, it's funny because you mentioned your quiet times now. Mine with the Hockey Journal is very much like April and then a little bit of May. And then it gets for a little bit of May, and then June is pretty quiet, July, but then like now is college recruitment. Like right now is college, so it's like now it's like all right, we're ramping back up here. So I'm a little busy, so you can make sure to go subscribe over at New England Hockey Journal. And yeah, that's been Poke the Bear. Hopefully Connor's having a great honeymoon, hanging with the lions and the tigers and the giraffes and the rhinoceroses.
Bro got stuck in Jumanji.
Dude can't get out. It's just stuck there forever. It's Jurassic Park.
Until the dice read 5 or 8. He's stuck there. He's going to come back like, what year is it? Like Robin Williams.
Yeah,
I can't wait.
That's exactly what's going to happen. But anyways, Ty, thank you. And that's been this episode of Poke the Bear. I'm Evan Marinofsky, presented by PrizePicks and GameTime. You Poke the Bear listeners. Have a great rest of your week.